Hey everybody, and welcome to This Week in Hell. Well, firstly, mea culpa. I was wrong. I said that RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., would not get rewarded for his loyalty to Donald Trump. I was wrong. He's just been appointed to the position of Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, okay. Not the best choice for that role, I feel. What with the bear carcass and everything. At least barely human. But that's the job he's been appointed to. And we're not going to go through every appointment. But Elon Musk is now one of two people appointed to the Department of Government Efficiency, which will dismantle government bureaucracy and slash excess regulations. This is a man who bought a $44 billion company and turned it into trash, but okay. Also, Tulsi Gabbard, who was former Democratic Congresswoman from Hawaii, Democratic in name only really, is Director of National Intelligence. We'll see how that goes when things get properly underway in January. It's obviously as a transition period right now. Biden is still the president. But I'm not expecting good things. And that being said, let's be very clear on this. No one is rooting for a failure. Everyone would be delighted to have everything they've said turn out to be wrong. Because that would mean things only benefit everybody. But it didn't happen last time. It's unlikely to happen this time. Or maybe 3 ghosts will visit him in the middle of the night, and he'll end up doing a good job. A really interesting story coming out of Tennessee this week. From 2017 to 2023, some 600 drivers were pulled over and arrested for driving under the influence. The fun thing there, not for them, was that all of them were sober, completely sober. I'd say sober as a judge, but the fact of the matter is some stories I've read in the past year or so, that's debatable. The fact that they were ultimately completely sober was proven by a blood test. What needs to happen is they need to investigate to find out why so many people, now, in the grand scheme of things, out of all the people that are pulled over and tested, 600 people is actually a very small number. Turns out like 1% of them are innocent. I believe one of the representatives said something about, 99% of people that are pulled over have actually done something wrong, or they got some trace of alcohol or drug in their system, which is something else worth talking about, and we'll get to that in a moment. But these 600 people had done literally nothing wrong, but it takes months to work it all out, in which time it affects their insurance, it affects their job. Some people could lose their job in a situation like that. They could lose their license. So what needs to happen is investigation needs to happen to find out why so many people are being falsely accused, where it's happening. Is it statewide? Is it happening in a small number of areas? Is some police captain trying to get his numbers up and he's told his people to make more arrests and this is how they're doing it? The story's still unfolding, and if there's any updates, I will update you in the future. But that brings us to something else. While I was gathering information and checking various sources for this, I will link the main article I looked at in the description. It was mentioned that, as I say, 99% of people had something in their system that would trigger, a legitimate arrest, except there are certain medications that might show up in a blood test as having a drug in your system, but you're not doing anything wrong. And I recall reading at least one story, or seeing one story. I might actually have seen this story on Steve Leto, which is where this story first came to my attention. Someone had a unique, a rare condition, a medical condition, where they weren't intoxicated, but something to do with their body chemistry would cause them to, on a breathalyzer, get a reading that would make it seem like they were driving drunk when they weren't. These tests they're worthwhile. They should keep doing them. It does improve road safety. But in this particular situation, and others, I think we need something better. Even if it's just more diligence on behalf of the officers, better training on behalf of the officers performing the tests. As I said, if there's anything more, I'll keep you updated. Are you a gladiator? Well, no, obviously not. But you might have a chance to in coming months. This is apparently going to take place next year. It seems that it's a promotional thing tying into the release of Gladiator II, which, guys, slow down, you don't need to rush the sequel. It's a collaboration between Airbnb and the Colosseum Archaeological Park. Guess how many times I had to say that. Which oversees the remnants of the Colosseum. They're offering... This isn't a paid experience, it's something you have to enter a competition to win. And they're offering a choice of 2 3-hour experiences, and they'll put you into a mock battle, and you can bring a few friends along with you. It feels disrespectful that you're using this site of historical significance where many people were, let's be honest, they were murdered. Of course they were. A lot of the people going into these fights in the Colosseum, they didn't want to be there. Some of them did, I'm sure. I'm sure there was people who thrived in there with the sword and the sandals and wiggling their swords about and all that. But many people were forced into it. Many people were murdered for the spectacle. That was the point. Keep the masses entertained so they didn't complain about anything else. Not that we would do anything similar these days. I'm silly talk. Put that thought out of your head. But it feels tacky. And at least one politician in Rome has commented how disrespectful it is. And I'm afraid I have very dark news, possibly one of the most tragic stories of the week. Debatable if it's the most tragic story. Kraft Heinz are being forced into a class action lawsuit in the States due to some issues with the ingredients in one of their products, specifically the Kraft Macaroni and Cheese, or cheesy pasta as it's known in the UK, or Kraft Dinner if you're from Canada. It's claimed by them that their products have no artificial ingredients. Some people are arguing that that is not the case. I like the stuff. I enjoy it very much. But I never had any illusions that there was anything natural in it. Surprising to me is that there was any natural ingredients in it. It doesn't taste even slightly natural, but sometimes you just want something cheap and artificial. At least I do. Comments what I could make there, but moving on. U.S. District Judge Mary Rowland has claimed that the allegations are strong enough to withstand a motion to dismiss. So, there's something to go ahead with there. They certainly shouldn't be lying on their product packaging, if that turns out to be the case. But it may not. They might be completely innocent. And it might be an entirely organic product. I remember when I was a boy and we'd go on summer vacations to the Kraft farms and we'd pick the mac and cheese fruits. 2 separate fruits. There was a mac fruit and there was a cheese fruit, and then you just kind of smushed them together. And it was good times. But times change, and who's to say they're still making it the same way? We'll see. I want mac and cheese now. Next up, in California. I can't think of California without hearing him say that. They just passed Prop 3, which actually enshrines the right to same-sex marriage in the old constitution there. It gets rid of Prop 8, which passed in 2008, which claimed that marriage was between a man and a woman. It's nice that they've finally joined us in the 21st century, although it is important to note it was already protected at the federal level, I believe. But it was an important move. It cleans up the language, and it gets rid of any silly loopholes, so hopefully that is protected properly going forward, but we will see. There are concerning times ahead. I'm going to give myself a pat in the back. There we go. For not making any silly, negative jokes about marriage. I've been a good boy today. And before we go today, let's move on to the in memoriam section. This actually happened last week as I was wrapping up, but it's quite an important one, important to me, and I wanted to include him here. We lost Tony Todd. Tony Todd, renowned actor, wonderful screen presence, rich, wonderful, wonderful voice. Perhaps best known to horror fans for the role of Candyman. What is blood for, if not for shedding? Candyman was a bit emo, really, in retrospect, wasn't he? But he was a horror icon. Played many roles. He was in the Final Destination movies, a whole bunch of other things. And on TV, in recent years, he did the voice of Zoom on The Flash. Teddy Sears played the character. Oh no, spoilers for a show that's no longer on air. Teddy Sears played the character in person, and of course various stuntmen in the suit. But the voice was done by Tony Todd, because if you have a badass villain clad all in black, you want to get a badass actor with a rich voice to do that. And it's kind of the James Earl Jones effect, I guess, isn't it? You'll have the guy in the suit, but you've got to get the voice. So they got James Earl Jones to do Vader, and I just realized we're losing some of our finest voice actors, aren't we? Well, that was already depressing. I hope I've depressed you more. Sorry about that. But I think for me, on a personal level, it always hits me hard when a Star Trek actor dies, because Star Trek's just an important part of my life. It's always been there for me growing up, one form or another. When I was very, very little, I had the original series. When I was still little, but not as little, in the late 80s, I had TNG. And so, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and I've enjoyed every Star Trek show that's come along ever since, and I even enjoy all the movies as well. And Tony Todd was a part of that. In many ways, he actually played the character of Kurn, who was the brother of Mr. Worf. Mr. Worf was one of the main cast, the Klingon member of The Next Generation. And he would later go on to reprise that character in Deep Space Nine. It was quite an interesting, albeit slightly disturbing story, where he wants to die. And they figure out a way that technically let them do that without really doing it. If you decide to watch it, I'm not going to get more into it, but it was certainly interesting, it was well done, and it was very tragic. And of course, he's also one of the few roles in Star Trek where he didn't have to wear too much makeup, at least for most of it. He played an older version of the character of Jake Sisko. There was a time travel episode, and we see Jake later in life when he's a grown man. He's a kid when we're first introduced to him. And Tony Todd played that part, and he brought a sense of tragedy and gravitas to it that was really, really needed at the time, because it was a tragic story. And then later he would go on to play the Alpha Herogen in Star Trek Voyager. See how I'm not even referring to my notes? I told you, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. You wouldn't have recognized him as the Alpha Herogen, but you would have known that voice anywhere. It's just... He was even actually, and this had slipped my mind, although it's a film I enjoyed, until I was looking up his filmography and trying to find things I wanted to mention. He was actually involved in the 1990s remake of The Night of the Living Dead, the one that Tom Savini did, the one that was in colour. He played Ben in that. And as always, he's one of those actors who never gave a bad performance, because I don't think he knew how. There's some actors who can be great in bad movies, and he was one of those actors. Whatever he was in, he was going to be good, even if everything else surrounding it wasn't that great. Tony leaves behind a wife, Fatma, and their 2 children, Alexander and Ariana. He died at his home in Marina del Rey, in California, on November the 6th. He was 69. less than a month shy of his 70th birthday. He will very, very much be missed. And that brings us to the end of This Week in Hell. Let's hope every week isn't hell. Let's hope it's just a name going forward. I appreciate you all watching. I appreciate you sticking with me on this journey as we try to build this into something worth looking at, something worth enduring. And that's what life's all about, isn't it? Enduring. Finding a reason to go on when you're surrounded by fire. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves.